I think the competitive window for the Miami Marlins is already open, but the organization might view things differently.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Marlins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. I'm a diehard Marlins fan, and I've podcasted about the team for the last 4 seasons. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And on today's show, I'm going to discuss the competitive window for the Miami Marlins. Is it open right now? Or does the organization have a further target, maybe 2027, 2028, in which the expectations they're putting on themselves come to reality in order to be a truly competitive team in the National League? I'm also going to discuss the outfield situation, the players involved. Is there somebody on the way out of Miami that is currently on the roster that we're not going to see opening day next season? Also, the Marlins tax. Why is it difficult to bring free agents over to Miami? All of that's coming up on today's show. It's also a mailbag episode. So we're going to answer mailbag questions today. Excited for this show. Let's start by talking about the competitive window for the Miami Marlins. Is it open? Can the Marlins go out and legitimately compete for a playoff berth? Now, here's the thing. At the beginning of the season, every single team is 0-0. The record is the same. No wins, no losses, and that brings a breath of fresh air. There's a sense of hope amongst all fan bases because it's exciting. Baseball's back. And you think to yourself, even if your team's not especially very good, maybe they can shock the world. I mean, I've felt that way for years watching the Marlins. 2022, I distinctly remember that Marlins team was not good at all. That was the year Sandy Alcantara won the Cy Young. But for the first few weeks of the season, they were playing some good baseball and hovering around 500. And you're like, well, you never know because the underdog story exists. Point being is that at the beginning of the year, everybody's excited for the season to start. But at the end of the season, there's only 6 teams that make the playoffs from each league. And ultimately, there's only one World Series champion. In order to put yourself in a position to go win that commissioner's trophy, you got to get to the dance. And so the question I have is, for 2026, are the Marlins actually expected to compete? Do we expect them to compete as a fan base? Or do we want to take a step back and just view next season as a development year, much like we did in 2025? Although last season brought really good results on the field. It saw a 17-game win improvement. So how much stock are we putting that 17-game win improvement and expect it to continue next season, to continue that improvement? Or are things just going to remain the status quo and they're going to hover around 75 to 80 wins, but we're not going to see that major jump record-wise on the field? Because that's a possibility as well. So I had a mailbag question from Alex, Forever Marlins, friend of the show. And he pretty much asked exactly what I'm asking right now. He said, what's our target year for being truly competitive? Should we be all in spending and trading wise to bolster the roster for this season? Or is it more appropriate to deal conservatively as to not put too much into a year in which we're not ready to establish ourselves as perennial contenders? A lot of key words I want to take away from this question. Number one is the phrase all in. Are the Marlins all in on competing this season? And so when I think about that phrase all in, I think of a team like the Dodgers or college football, a team like Ohio State from a year ago. Can't stand the Buckeyes. And I'm sure a lot of Canes fans feel the same way. But Ohio State had a $20 million roster. They were all in on a national championship. If they didn't win a national championship, in their minds, it would be viewed as a failure. And some organizations professionally have the same mentality, especially in baseball. The Dodgers being one of them, the Yankees being another. If the Yankees don't win the World Series, then their fan base is completely upset with the state of the organization. They're saying fire Aaron Boone. The Dodgers, Dave Roberts, years of postseason struggles. He finally got a World Series in 2020, although that to me has an asterisk next to it. But he's won back-to-back championships now, and the Dodgers are legitimately a super team. But they have expectations of being in the World Series. The Marlins haven't had an expectation of being a World Series contender ever. The 1997 team came out of nowhere. The 2003 team came out of nowhere. And apart from that COVID season, those were the only years in which the Marlins made the playoffs. And then 2023 happened. Again, out of nowhere. Now we see a new regime, a new front office, a new philosophy take place in South Florida, and a rebuild starts, but this time it feels different. This time we're seeing young players emerge, a young core start to come together. And then on the field, a 17-game improvement from year 1 to year 2. So the question naturally arises, what are they going to do for an encore in year 3? And do we expect that team to compete for the playoffs? I say yes. I say this team can and should compete for a playoff berth, but a few things have to happen. Number one, they have to invest financially. They cannot sit back on their heels and wait for the rest of the free agency market and the dominoes to fall, and then midway through January, beginning of February, sign a couple of stragglers that haven't found a home yet. No disrespect to Cal Quantrill, but when you wait that late to sign a free agent, there's a reason why. Okay? And hindsight 2020, the grass is green. Cal Quantrill's not that good. And it was a very buy low, provide some depth signing for a team that wasn't expected to be remotely close to being good. And this Marlins team exceeded expectations. And you want to reward that sign of progress. You have to reinvest in the success you're already finding, which is why I say Bruce Sherman has to spend in free agency. The Marlins have to be active in upgrading at first base, in upgrading the lineup in particular. A lot of outfield rumors going on with the Marlins. Cedric Mullins, apparently the Marlins were interested in him. Mike Yastrzemski, they were linked to him. The bullpen is the same way, needs to be upgraded. This team does have holes. It's not perfect, but you hit the right buttons, you make the smart investments, this team could compete for a wild card spot. I see no reason why they shouldn't. Now, the organization may view things differently. Peter Bendix, I've said this before, he keeps his cards close to his chest. He's not going to reveal anything to the public. He's very political in his answers, very monotone, just says it's like he's reading off a teleprompter. He knows what he's going to say pretty much to any question. He's not giving you information. But Bendix and his philosophy might have a year in the future circled where, okay, by this time, we will be a 90-win team, or things didn't go to plan. And if that's the case, if Peter Bendix thinks to himself, 2027 is a year in which Thomas White is probably starting for us, Robbie Snelling is starting for us, depending on what you do with Sandy Alcantara, Ryan Weathers, Yuri Perez is 2 years older than he is right now. He'll be more established. This team could have one of the best rotations. The development of Iva Arquette, it's a huge X factor in the Marlins' plans to compete. Peter Bendix might think 2027 is the year in which the Marlins should compete. I'm a fan first. I love this team. I'm never going to expect this team to lose because it's not the time. My thing is, if you have signs of success and you're an owner, you should spend money smartly and invest back into the team, back into the lineup, and improve the roster where you can. You have to do it smart. You can't be giving out crazy contracts. More about that later on in the show. But it's an excellent question from Alex. I think the organization, if I had to put a year on it, in my opinion, I would say 2027 is where you look at this team, and if they're not in the playoffs or they have a losing record in 2027, fans are going to be justifiably upset because I'm not sold right now on how much the Marlins are going to be active in free agency this season. I say they should, because if they do, if they make a trade or two, I think this team can compete. But if they just kind of meander around this offseason and subtract from the roster, if Edward Cabrera goes and there's not a suitable replacement for him, there's not a huge upgrade at first base, then there's a world in which guys regress and the Marlins are a 74, 75 win team and outside of the playoffs. But there's also the world in which they feel like me and say, hey, if we hit the right buttons and we change the narrative, spend some more money than we've ever spent in the last couple of years under Bendix, then who knows? We can make a run at the postseason. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the outfield situation for the Marlins. Who's here and who's on their way out? First, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But getting tickets is the hardest part. That's why Gametime is so clutch. It finally gives fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when the great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands, and it makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app. The layout is so simple. You scroll through the matchups you want to see, compare seat views. If you're a USA fan, go to the USA games. It's going to be there on Gametime. Team Brazil, lots of great teams out there. There's no confusion. There's no hunting for fine print. Everything is so simple. And one of the really cool aspects of Gametime is, of course, the upfront fees. No hidden fees. What you see is what you pay. No last-second surprises. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets, every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Of course, terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network out there. And for my everyday listeners, circle your calendars for December 8th. Something special that the network is putting together is in the works. So just remember, December 8th, coming up in a few days. The outfield situation for the Marlins. Who is here to stay and who is on their way out? So I had this question from, let's see who it was that asked this question. Shout out Confused Traditional Catholic over on X. He said, Jeremiah, if Norby is on the roster as an outfielder, someone has to go. Who is your candidate to be traded or demoted? Of course, thank you for the questions. You can always submit questions throughout the week. It doesn't have to be a mailbag episode. I'll find a way to incorporate it into the show. YouTube comments, I read those. Twitter DMs are open. You can always tag me as well. If Norby moves to the outfield is an interesting preposition, to say the least, from an organizational perspective, because there is potentially talk of, Norby getting reps in the outfield. He's played the position before in the minor leagues. Now, the issue is Jacob Marcy's not leaving center. Kyle Stowers isn't leaving one of the corner spots. And Griffin Conine, although they said they're going to give him reps at first, which I'm still hesitant about. He's never played first base in college, collegiate summer ball, or the minor leagues. He's never played first. Conine's got a great arm in the outfield, and I think he's valuable out there. So moving Norby to the outfield essentially says, look, we want to keep his bat in the lineup. Here's a way to do it without sacrificing a lot defensively because, to be honest, he's not that good at third base. Very poor defender at third. His most natural position is second. And of course, he can't play second base. I don't think Norby is going to start in the outfield very much, if at all, for the Marlins in 2026. If he does, I expect it's just a couple of games, a handful of games. I do think he's going to find his way into the lineup, maybe the starting lineup at third base, because I think the organization wants Norby to be the guy over Pauly. They look at Connor Norby and his bat, and they like what they saw in 2024, what he's done in the minor leagues, and the upside with Norby's offensive profile more so than Graham Pauly. Personally, I like Graham Pauly at third base. I think Pauly should be the starting third baseman from an internal standpoint. If you can upgrade, and I'm going to have a show where we talk about a potential upgrade at third base, hint, Eugenio Suarez, coming up in a future episode. But Norby, Pauly, they're going to battle it out in spring training, and that might take care of itself. It's interesting how they're going to handle that whole situation. But the outfield, as it stands right now, even if Norby doesn't move full-time to left or right, there's still a couple of guys who I think are in danger. So Joey Wiemer's already been DFA'd. He was traded to the Giants, so he's out of the organization. Jacob Marcy's a lock. Kyle Stowers is a lock. Conine is a lock for the roster. He's just got to stay healthy. I think Heriberto Hernandez is a huge X factor for this team. If Heriberto Hernandez can build off of a really impressive rookie season, then this organization is going to be in a real good spot in terms of their outfield and the depth they have. Because if Hernandez plays like he did last year, if not get better, and he's your fourth option, he's the first guy off the bench, I mean, I'm signing up for that. I like what Heriberto brings to the table. Got a lot of power. Double-digit home runs in limited playing time a season ago. Look out for Heriberto Hernandez next season. Dane Myers is where I'm concerned about because I don't see Myers getting the playing time next season. He was a starter last year, started off super hot, was the team's best hitter to start the year, and then Kyle Stowers just went absolutely berserk and flew by Dane in the, from an organizational perspective of who's carrying the offense. Augustine gets called up and Dane starts slumping, and the slump just continued. It was a rough 2025 for Dane Myers. Battled some injuries, and now all of a sudden, when we talk about the future of this team, Dane Myers isn't really mentioned in any capacity. And I think there's a chance that he's phased out of the plans for the 2026 Marlins. I don't know what his role would be. I really don't. A defensive replacement, a spot starter. I mean, he had an OPS last season of 617. 617 OPS. 2024, 2023, there was some promise, limited action. He gets his full, time to play. This is your time to shine. He didn't make the most of it. So for Dane Myers, he's going to need a big spring training. If he's still on the roster, he's going to need to really prove himself, because Kemp Alderman is also in AAA, one step away from the major leagues. And if Alderman is tearing it up at the beginning of the year, maybe a couple months into the season, there's a chance they give Alderman a shot at the major league level. Dane Myers has got to hit to stay, within the favorable graces of the front office. We've seen before, this team is not hesitant to part ways with players who aren't cutting it. Matt Mervis, perfect example of that. 7 home runs to start the season. He's like tied for 3rd in the National League. Real good storyline. And it quickly just all fell apart. Could not hit worth a lick. And he's DFA'd a month and a half, 2 months later. So for Myers, you're coming off of a poor showing. You're blocked from a starting role. I don't see any situation, barring injury, that Myers is a starting outfielder next season. So, and he's probably not the 4th guy either. He's not the first guy off the bench. He's also a right-handed hitter like Heriberto Hernandez. So in that situation, you're looking at your lefties, Conine, Stowers, Marcy, but then your right-handed platoon bat / bench bat is Heriberto Hernandez. Do you want to keep another righty as a 5th outfielder? You also have Javier Sanoja, who can play the outfielder and is a right-handed stick. So something to think about, something to monitor as the weeks continue. Winter meetings start on Monday. Excited for that, guys. A lot to pay attention to. The trade rumors are flying. I mean, we're going to continue to read trade rumor articles pretty much every day until a trade happens. Or if it doesn't, we're still going to read trade rumors, because that's just the nature of the business. That's the nature of the game in the media world. Everybody's excited. Everybody misses baseball. I know I sure do. I miss baseball. I'm ready for spring training to start and games to get going, but we have a while until then. Still exciting times. Coming up next, when it comes to signing free agents, do the Marlins have to pay more? What's wrong with bringing free agents to Miami? Is the struggle real? It really is. We're going to talk about the Marlins tax right after this. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot. He's making a bunch of catches. He's over 100 yards. You want to get in on that action. A defense tightens up. They're stuffing the run. They're getting turnovers. The momentum flips. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment immediately. There's live spreads, and the money lines adjust instantly. If you like money lines before the NFL Sundays, I got a couple for you. Dolphins -3 on the road this week against the Jets. And you also have my Chargers +2.5 against the Eagles at home. Chargers hoping for that upset. If you like a certain line, you can go over to FanDuel right now and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. The Marlins tax. Very good question I got today from Marlin Maniac, Sean Milrick, who actually just wrote an article about this. And he hopped in the comment section and he asked about my opinion on this. And I thought it was a great topic to get into. So when it comes to signing free agents, okay, the Marlins the last couple of seasons haven't done anything. Really, they signed Tim Anderson and they signed Cal Quantrill. And so Sean Millerick asks, when do you think the Marlins will reach a point when they can stop paying the Marlins tax on free agents? And what he means by that is overpaying for free agents, having to outbid other teams because you're the Marlins. What's the reasoning for that? Do players not want to go to sunny, warm South Florida? They don't want to go to the beach. They don't want to enjoy what Miami has to offer. Of course they do. But there's a difference between professional sports and then living in Florida, enjoying Miami, and all the benefits that comes with it. I do think there is a struggle when it comes to attracting free agents here, because I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't believe the majority of baseball cares about the Marlins in the slightest. I don't. I think if you're a Marlins fan, you do. I think if you're a diehard fan, you're an everyday listener, you love this team. You care about the Marlins. You remember those 2 World Series championships if you were old enough for that. But if you're a Yankee fan, if you're in New York media, do you think you're giving any attention to Miami other than, oh, they have Sandy Alcantara, they should trade for him? They're a terrible team. The Marlins are going to trade everyone again. Who can we get? That's all it is. So a free agent, pretty much when there's interest in a big star free agent, there's never the Marlins name associated with that. You're not going to see the Marlins tied to Kyle Schwarber this season or Kyle Tucker this offseason. It's just not going to happen. The teams that are linked to him, of course, you're going to have the Yankees, the Mets, the Blue Jays, the high payroll teams. So the first part to answer this question is the top free agents are never going to come to Miami because Miami's never going to pay the money required. They're not going to give a $400 million deal again under this regime. Jeffrey Loria did that with Giancarlo Stanton, the $300 million 13-year deal. At the time, the largest deal in North American sports history. And that was a statement from a team that historically didn't spend in free agency, or in that case, extend their own player. And then guess what? He got traded. So does it really affect the legacy of the Marlins in terms of wanting to spend or being willing to spend? No, it doesn't. So the top free agents are automatically not coming to Miami. It's just not going to happen. The way star players are going to come to Miami is either trading for them when they're maybe before they hit their peak and their true stardom, or developing them, drafting, international free agency, kind of like the Braves did with Ronald Acuna, and then sign him to a team-friendly extension, which is why contract extensions in your pre-arbitration, arbitration years are super important for the way this team operates. But then you have the example of a player who isn't a superstar, but is still worthy of a big contract or a lucrative contract for what he provides. All right. Josh Naylor, 5 years, $90 million, I believe it was. It's not superstar money, but it's a good, lucrative deal, and it's a well-deserved deal. Were the Marlins ever involved? Probably not. And if he had to choose between coming to the Mariners or the Marlins, and it's the same amount of money, because of the dysfunctionality historically over the last 2 decades, he's probably going to choose the Mariners. The Marlins have to prove on the field that what they're building is special. They have a core that you can win with, and then they're also willing to pay money that's equal to these other teams. They can't lowball anyone, of course. But unless they're like Wei and Chen, 5 years, $80 million. Wei and Chen wasn't ever worth that money. He took it because the Marlins overpaid. So there's a balance of overpaying for players and then just being smart and offering the contracts that other teams would be giving out. You know, if the Marlins want Pete Fairbanks, are they going to have to outbid the Blue Jays? Probably, because the situation in Toronto is more attractive from the perception of a baseball player than Miami. Now, Avisail Garcia didn't care. He got 4 years, $53 million. Says he wants to win a ring in Miami. And look what happened. Didn't even finish his contract before he's DFA'd. He was horrible. Because it was all about the money. A player has to want to win. A player has to be ready to commit to something that's not just about themselves. It's about winning. He sees the culture that Clayton McCullough is trying to build, that the players are trying to build. The core that is being established, Yuri Perez. He sees Kyle Stowers, Augustine Ramirez, and he sees a 17-game improvement from a season ago and says, I want to be a part of that. And I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but if the Marlins continue to have success and take steps forward for 2026, then next offseason, we could be having an entirely different conversation. The Marlins tax, to me, is simple. It's, why go to Miami when we're going to lose? I can go get money and go be on a competitive team elsewhere. The only way I'm going to go to Miami is if they throw me the bag. A good example of this is the Cleveland Browns, Myles Garrett. Great player, phenomenal defensive end. He's going to win the Defensive Player of the Year, might break the NFL sacks record. He was disgruntled, unhappy with his situation in Cleveland because Cleveland is a poorly run organization who doesn't win. They don't win. He wanted to be traded. There were trade rumors. Oh, and then all of a sudden, Myles Garrett signs this humongous contract, and he's staying in Cleveland. Well, why do you want to be in Cleveland? Because they gave him a ton of money, and money talks. So that's what Miami's had to do. They've had to give out these huge contracts because money talks. Now, when you start winning and you start building something, and I think they are, then things can start shifting. You probably won't have to overpay to that extent. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Marlins. I appreciate everybody who submitted questions, who tuned into the show. If I didn't answer your question in this episode, I'm going to answer it in a next episode coming up. Until next time, guys, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go fish.